Welcome. This is actually my fourth World Congress on Information Technology that I've been a speaker at one of these events. And they've all been very good. Some of the other events have been very high-profile people, Bill Clinton, Margaret Thatcher, Mikhail Gorbachev, and so on. But I don't think it's simply because I'm a Canadian that I'll say to you, I think that this is actually the best program of the four that I've been on. I don't know if Anthony Williams is in the room. Is he? He's upstairs doing something. But he was the program director and put this together, and he's done an extraordinary job. So maybe sometime when he is in the room, we can give him a round of applause. But the next panel is an example of that. This is a panel of Canadian entrepreneurs and innovators, and every one of them is an extraordinary person and an extraordinary story. And I'm so much looking forward to this. And what we're going to do is allow you to interact with them too, because the audience is now at a reasonable size. We can pass the mic around, get involved, ask some questions, disagree, and let's have a conversation. Chairing the panel is Valerie Fox. She's sort of a Canadian superstar around digital media. She's director of Ryerson University's Digital Media Zone, which is this quite extraordinary initiative within the university. And she has won all kinds of accolades. I'll just tell you one. May 2012, she was presented with this very prestigious Women in Technology Sarah Kite Award for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. This is awarded annually to a Canadian woman who's shown the most outstanding technological innovation and corporate leadership, significantly expanding the frontiers of Canada's advanced technology industry. So I'll start off by introducing Valerie Fox. Thank you.
I'm very, very excited to be moderating digital innovation in Canada. You know, on Monday, I was listening to Ministers Goodyear and to Brad Dougad about just some wonderful things that Canada is doing. What I didn't hear from them, though, was the specifics of really amazing companies that are already coming out of Canada and having a huge impact, not only in Canada, but I think in the world. And so that's what's making me so excited about having such a wonderful panel like I have right here. I'm just going to introduce each one of them. To my right is Al Edwards, Chief Executive of Structural Genomics Consortium. And then we have Jen Evans, CEO and Chief Strategist from Sequentia Environics. We have Kunal Gupta, Chief Executive Officer from Polar Mobile. And Isabelle Bettez, President and CEO of 8D Technologies. What's very interesting about our little panel session is the fact that I haven't met any of these people before, and I was thinking to myself how spectacular that I am going to meet with them, have an intimate conversation with them, and do it in front of all of you. And so I thought, wow, that's pretty amazing. So we're going to see how this all runs. I'm going to ask each one of the panelists to talk about themselves and about their companies, and talk about challenges and successes too. And then I think we're going to kick it off with some questions. Know that we're going to invite the audience actually to participate when we're about 45 minutes into this, because we'd really like to hear your feedback to get into the conversation. And I should tell you that I did have the honor of talking to them about half an hour ago, and we already got into a really spectacular conversation on values, and I hope we get back to that soon. Just a little bit, I wanted to just mention something about the Digital Media Zone, because it's pretty amazing, and I'm kind of thrilled to have to even talk about it. Ryerson University is a university that's really putting itself on the map as a university of entrepreneurship and innovation. And 2.5 years ago, we started something called the Digital Media Zone, which is It's an incubator, it's an accelerator for young digital companies, and it's also a think tank for industry challenges. And it's all wrapped up in this experiential learning environment, because what we're trying to do is change 21st century education so that we can enable our young people to not only come up with new companies, but also be more valuable, really learn the T skills, which is a broad range of skills, as well as their vertical skills. And I'll be talking to the panel about that as well. So enough about me. And I would like to actually, Al, if you could start and talk about your company and yourself, and also challenges, and yeah, we'll just go from there.
Hi there. I don't know if you guys have this number thing. This is really digital. Evidently, we have 3,846 seconds to go. No, 5, 4, 3, 2. I've never seen this before. So I'm a professor at the University of Toronto and the University of Oxford, and I run a public-private partnership that addresses a pretty important question, I think, is that why can't we cure cancer, Alzheimer's, schizophrenia, depression? And if you look at the productivity of the drug discovery sector, which includes universities and biotechs and governments and industry, since the 1960s, we've been making fewer medicines for more money. Currently, the average cost for a new medicine to be approved by regulators is $5 billion each, and that number keeps going up. And so companies are no longer doing research in neurosciences. So neurosciences includes Alzheimer's, depression, and schizophrenia because it's too risky. So our organization started 10 years ago, said this is a pretty fundamental problem that's of social importance, economic importance, and created a consortium in which industry and the UK government and the Canadian government collaborate, and our modus operandi is no patents, and everything we gets put into the public domain without restriction, because that is the fundamental problem in the discovery of medicines, is we don't know what we're doing. And so if the more knowledge we gain, the fewer mistakes we'll make, the more productive the sector will be, the more cures we'll have for these diseases. And I think the fun part about it is how to carve out pre-competitive spaces in what is deemed to be quite a competitive industry dominated by intellectual property. And we have 8 companies, 8 large pharmaceutical companies donating money, a lot of money, to the consortium. And I think this is a social and business trend that you're going to see as the way that medicines are discovered becomes more of a different kind of social sharing ecosystem. It's economically driven. It makes perfect economic sense, but the trouble is that the way that the current ecosystem works and the reward systems doesn't allow people to share, and we're starting to figure out a way how to do that.
Thanks. I'm sorry, I got so into it. I was calming down. Hi, Jen. Could you tell us a bit about your company and what you're up to, challenges and successes?
Absolutely. It's great to be here, everyone. Thank you so much for welcoming us to Montreal. I'd also like to say I've been an entrepreneur for about 10 years, and I'm pretty sure this is the first time I've been on a panel that was 60% women. So thank you to the organizers for getting that female constituency out. Thank you. So I actually have a number of roles. First of all, I'm actually the chair this year of ITAC, the organization that's been very involved in putting WCIT on. ITAC is a 60-year-old organization, the Information Technology Association of Canada. We have about 300 members across the country, ranging from companies as large as CGI to companies as small as mine. Sequentia and Veronix were about 20 people. And I started that company in 2002, started as a consultancy. We specialize in helping organizations build communities around brands or initiatives. So we've worked with organizations like General Electric, GE, to help them build communities of people who are interested in cooking around some of their appliance products. We work with the Centers for Addiction and Mental Health, helping them build communities of both practitioners, families, patients, caregivers, to understand the implication and impact of mental health issues, not only on the individuals themselves, but on the larger groups of people and networks that surround those people. We've also helped organizations like the Globe and Mail build communities around commenting and understanding what is the role of a commenter as it comes to journalism and newspapers, and who are the people that really want to inform that conversation and carry that conversation forward. what's been very interesting about my career is that I've been running this services business for about 10 years, and we've recently moved into the software space. So that has been very exciting for us. We just launched our first product. It's a content marketing measurement platform called Squeeze. And certainly moving from the consulting to the software world has been a very interesting transition. So I'm looking forward to sharing some of those experiences with you over the course of the panel this morning.
Thank you very much. Canal.
Thank you. Good morning. Good morning. It's a rough crowd. It's good to see some things don't change. I graduated about 5 years ago, and you walk into any university classroom and everybody's always sitting at the back, and we've got the exact same thing happening here today. Some human behaviors don't change. I'm excited to be here. I was born in Montreal. I come back to Montreal quite a bit. Out of curiosity, how many people are not from Montreal that are here today in the audience? All right, the majority. That's great. A bit about us. I started a company called Polar Mobile 5 years ago. And 5 years ago, the mobile space was totally different than what it is today. Our customers, consumers, barely understood what it meant to have a mobile application. Mobile advertising was a foreign concept. And in the last 5 years, we've built a software company focused on working with media companies around the world and giving them software to publish mobile applications and mobile websites. We work with about 400 media brands globally, everybody from the Globe and Mail to Wall Street Journal, Time Magazine, Sports Illustrated, here in Canada, the Hockey News, Elle Magazine, Canadian Living, Maclean's, Canadian Business, and the list goes on. So all these media companies use our software to get their content to you guys across smartphones and tablet devices, be it through websites or applications. We've learned a lot in growing our business over the last 5 years, and in some ways it feels like we're still just getting started, given how early we still are in the mobile space. Mobile has completely taken over our lives. I see that as a good thing. Others may not agree, but I think there's a lot of opportunity for companies like us in this space. Outside of Polar, I chair the Impact Entrepreneurship Group, which is a nonprofit youth-led group that I started 9 years ago around the promotion of entrepreneurship to young people. And 9 years ago, entrepreneurship was not cool. It was barely talked about, especially in a university setting. And it's really exciting to see initiatives like the DMZ and a number of other initiatives out there to help young people get started with their businesses. So that is something I'm very passionate about. I spend a lot of time towards encouraging young people to be entrepreneurial, whether it be starting a business, joining a small business, or being entrepreneurial within a larger enterprise. I think a theme you'll hear from me in this morning's comments is all about focus. And focus is the one thing that I wish somebody had told me about 5 years ago. Focus is the reason for some of our mistakes, and it's okay to talk about failures. And it's also a big reason of part of our successes. And you're going to see that as a big theme for me here today. So I'm excited to get on with the discussion and share our views as to where the opportunities are for innovation in Canada.
Thanks so much, Canal. Isabel.
Thank you. Good morning again. I'm glad to see that we have a lot of people outside of Montreal. I'm actually based in Montreal. I will tell you a bit about what we do, and I think that for some of you, it will give you an opportunity to maybe see the city differently with some of the products that we have developed. So as I said, we are based in Montreal. I run a high-tech company that was created in 1996. I run it with my brother, Jean-Sébastien. What we do basically is we develop product and solution for the M2M market. So what is M2M? It's machine to machine, machines talking together without a human intervention. To be more specific, some of the products that we have developed are very present in Montreal. If you walk in Montreal down the street, you will find high-tech parking meters, solar-based with real-time payment and so on. So it's on-street, pay by space. When you park your vehicle, you just have to pay and basically walk away because everything is monitored using our technology. which we develop is hardware and software. Another example is bike share. So if you walk down the street of Montreal, once again, you will probably notice that we have a lot of bikes around here. So the technology, hardware and software behind the bikes has been developed by AD. This bike solution is in Montreal, but it's also in London, UK. Over there, they call it the Boris bikes. We have it in Melbourne, Australia, in Boston, in Washington, Minneapolis, in Canada, in Toronto, Ottawa, Montreal. So this has been a great success for us. And just so that you understand what we do, I said hardware, so it's the point of sale, the kiosk, where you pay for your parking space or when you rent your bicycle. It's all the intelligence of the system, the cable related to it, and the software. So the software to manage the system remotely, the real-time payment system, so to the bank and back within 10 seconds. It's solar-based, as I said, so it's free from the grid. You just have to put it basically on the ground, and it's going to work. So we are creating products that are working in a very hostile environment. Hostile because it's outdoor, but hostile because it's used by human beings. So it could be very rough at times. People don't like to pay for their parking. They do like to ride the bikes, but the relationship with the technology or the product can be rough at times. So we have specialized in this niche. The third one, we're working on it right now, being car share, electric car share solutions. And what all these solutions have in common is that they are all based on the same technological platform that we've been working on for 12 years now. So about 70% of the solution is already done when we go from parking to biking to car. We are reusing the same basis and then customizing for each of these segments. So it's been a pretty exciting journey for us, very challenging. When asked about challenges, just building a company in itself, hardware and software. We also did the transition from a service business to a product solution business, which we were told couldn't be done, very encouraging. The culture was different, but we had the product solution culture, so it went well for us, but it was extremely challenging, bootstrapping this company to bring it to where it is today. So the challenge has been throughout. Going internationally has been a fantastic experience, but just keeping at it, the marketing of the product, continuing selling, and we're going to talk about some of these strategy to get out there at the international level. So it's been a great challenge. It's building a company here in Canada, in Montreal, is challenging, I have to say. Entrepreneurship, as you mentioned, is not something that is as cool as it could be. It's a lot of work, but at the same time, it's a lot of gratification. I think it's something that needs to be known. I'm also involved in a great initiative that is called the École d'entrepreneurship de Beauce. So it's a school for entrepreneurs based in Beauce, in Quebec, but it's entrepreneurs teaching to entrepreneurs. So it's on a sharing base, and I think it's building a community, doing a lot of good for entrepreneurs in technology as well. So it's very encouraging, very challenging, very exciting. Thank you.
That's amazing. Thank you, everybody. I have 1,000 questions. I'm going to start with one. And you were mentioning it, Isabelle, about challenges in Canada. What do you think are some of the biggest challenges that you have in Canada? And I will open it up, and whoever talks first, jump in, please. All right, I'll pick somebody. Jen.
Well, I think Canada is both an amazing place to start a company, and obviously there are some challenges being an entrepreneur here. There are some of the tried and true statements about Canada are a little more conservative. We'd like to see a little bit more proof. We're not exactly going to be as adventurous as some of the folks in Silicon Valley sometimes in trying out or funding a new idea. At the same time, we have an incredibly stable economy. We have a very supportive system of business that is willing to give entrepreneurial and new companies a good shot. And certainly we've seen that culture even evolving over the past 5 or 6 years. It's been fascinating to me as an entrepreneur to see the amazing flowering in the Toronto area in particular. There's an amazing little subculture of entrepreneurial startups ranging from companies supported by the DMZ. And I think that speaks to the fact that there is a great environment here for it. What I think we struggle with, though, is getting companies to sort of the proverbial next level. And there is a lot of work being done in that area when it comes to either venture capital or support or even government programs to ensure that we're trying to buy from Canadian companies, whether or not that's protectionist or not. That kind of support can be critical to early stage growth. So I think, as I said, it's a bit of the best and worst of both worlds, but some of the negative aspects I think we're really working on.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. Is that next stage thing is a very big challenge for us, and I'm thinking, Isabel, you want to say something on that?
I think one of the big challenge we have in Canada is the fact that we are pretty young at it still.
Yeah.
We don't have many generations that have done it. So to realize for the one backing these efforts to build companies, they are risk averse, yes. And the fact that you need to understand when you build a business, failing is part of the success in a way. So if you start with a plan and it's not good 2 years into it, you need to have the flexibility to change it. Right. Now, if you do understand that, or maybe you don't, eventually you will, but your partners and the people putting the money in the company don't, you need to stick to the plan. Well, it's not going to work. So this culture of entrepreneurship haven't been there before. That is something that is difficult because we are not reinventing the wheels. I mean, what we're doing here, they've done elsewhere. Like in USA, they have more experience at it. There's good and bad, but I've been with the MIT on some program here in Canada and going to Boston and seeing the culture there where somebody has a problem and you just raise your hand and everybody is there to help you. Well, here it's a bit different because we are younger at it. So to understand that you can share success, this is so important to me. And to understand that, this is a team thing. You help one another, you're helping yourself because you are building this community that has success. And then you're sort of, one is successful, so it shows that you can do it here. And then for the next one, it might be a bit easier because people will have more faith, let's say. If you come with big ideas and nobody has done that before, my God, you have a lot of people to convince and it gets even harder to get what you want to get. So that part we need to do more, and we need to to work together to have success individually and together so that for the next generations, the next one, not even generation, for us as well, my God. So it gets easier, it gets easier.
Canal?
Look, entrepreneurship is hard regardless of where you're based. And those of you who have experienced it firsthand or have family or friends that have done it or that are in the process of joining companies that are doing it, you recognize it is hard regardless of where you're based. I think 3 things that come to mind in terms of being based in Canada versus, say, other markets. First and foremost is talent. I think in Canada we have a great culture, and especially from an engineering and technical perspective of producing great technical talent. We do have a shortage of business and go-to-market and sales and marketing leadership and experience at a global level. We've struggled with finding sales and marketing leaders that have experience building software companies globally that happen to be based in, call it Toronto or other parts of Canada. So I think talent, specifically from a go-to-market perspective, we don't have enough experience here as our companies need. I think the second comes to mindset, and that is having a global mindset. I was once asked, are you a Canadian business going global, or are you a global business based in Canada? And that made me really think, and I think the same thing applies to all of us as entrepreneurs, maybe really think about what are we trying to achieve, and we came to the conclusion we are a global business that's based in Canada. And that changed the way we make decisions around products, around go-to-market strategy, around pricing, around languages. Today we have customers in 12 countries, and that probably wouldn't have happened if we didn't have that mindset of being a global business from day one versus a Canadian business looking to expand globally. So that's the second piece, I think, around mindset and us thinking and seeing the world as our market from day one, which I haven't seen enough of in our peers and my peers of other tech CEOs. And The third piece comes down to mentorship. So building on your point, I don't think there are enough experienced entrepreneurs that younger guys like me can learn from on a day-to-day basis for very tactical items. I'm traveling quite a bit, whether it be the US or the UK or internationally, and getting the opportunity to pick brains of people who have had successful careers. And you'd be surprised how many Canadians there are in other parts of the world that have been very successful, and they're very willing to share their time and their thoughts. So I think those are three areas in terms of talent, mindset, and mentorship that are different here in Canada than other ecosystems in the world.
Thanks, Canal. Al, your consortium hits the whole world. I mean, and you're very much involved on an international stage. Do you have any comments on Canada's role within that, or just what we're doing as a world community?
Yeah, I'm always reticent to talk about a Canadian problem, because if you go to a meeting such as this in Boston, you'll get the same kind of stuff. It's hard to raise money. No one seems to appreciate me. There is a community there, but they have different problems there. I guess over the last 15 years, I've started up 4 or 5 companies and raised of about, say, a quarter, maybe a third of $1 billion, and most of that's been from outside the country, and I'll take their money as well as Canadian money. So Canada's a great place to live and a great place to do business, and I don't see there is much of a problem. Honestly, we just got to go out and do something.
Well, thanks for that. I've been talking to a few people from around the world, and they view Canada as a great testing ground. We don't have a huge population, so our market is very small. Any comments about Canada as a testing ground?
I'm happy to share a story about how we started our business that hits that point dead on. So when we started our company 5 years ago, Rogers Media was our first customer, and we launched the first mobile applications for Maclean's and Canadian business. And this is before the iPhone existed in terms of apps. This is on a device called the BlackBerry. Maybe some of you have heard of it. Okay. After we got Rogers Media as our first customer, we launched the first applications for some of the magazines. We went right into the US. And we got some fairly big US customers like Time Warner and CBS and Bloomberg and Businessweek. And then the rest of the Canadian companies bought from us after that, which is a separate point. But us having that initial proof point with Rogers Media, and TC Media was our second customer, definitely helped us break through the doors with the big US companies, which drove significant revenues for our company and credibility, and really helped get us to the next level. I think within the Canadian ecosystem, you look at a city like Toronto, it's great for achieving that first test case. Because regardless of what industry you're selling into, be it retail, banking, government, media, advertising, agencies, there's a lot of companies in Canada that are headquartered in Toronto across different verticals. And any entrepreneur needs to get that first few case studies, first few customers. And Toronto's a great place to do it. Really important you follow it up, though, with a few plane rides and trips to the US and take that momentum and leverage it to get bigger clients.
But that's not a Canadian phenomenon. That's if you're in Stockholm, you start a company and you get your first Stockholm clients, and then you move to a larger market. So it's not a Canada thing. I'm going to push back on the what's so special about Canada. It's the same everywhere, I think.
But I think it's true that as a testing ground, in order to make sure that your ideas are going to be valid and they are going to be accepted globally, Canada's a great place to start, especially, obviously, if you're based here. We had a similar experience. We were actually planning to do most of our business in Canada when we initially launched. We ran our first community program with Intel of Canada in 2004 and intended to expand. And what we found is that the types of programs we were building had to be driven at the head office level. And there's obviously a limited number of Canadian companies that are of significant enough size and headquartered here for us to build a business around it. So we had to go down to the States pretty quickly. Ended up working with companies like HP and GE and Autodesk down there. And what we found is that the Canadian market is actually about 2 to 2.5 years behind in terms of adoption of those types of programs. So we had to bide our time, go down to the US. We certainly built the initial part of the business here, but we couldn't expand here to the extent that we wanted to, and that was the reason why we had to go south of the border, and our next plans are to at the right time, move into Europe.
Isabel, did you have something similar?
Yeah, I tend to agree with you on the fact that if you are to install your solutions products at home to begin with, regardless of where you are, it's a very good idea on the message you send to the world, basically. You know, if at home they buy what you are selling, I mean, you send a great message. We were fortunate to be able to install our first parking solution here and also the first bike share solution here. So it was very powerful for the rest of the deployments. Also, and this is very specific to AD, the fact that here in Canada we have a very diversified climate. I'm talking weather here, is very interesting because we are, I mean, green solution outdoor to be able to have the snow, the rain, the heat, the cold. From that perspective, it was great.
It's not cold here. Don't believe her.
Yes, indeed. It was interesting when we installed, just a quick one on parking. When we installed our solution in St. Pete, Florida, we thought we had seen it all because we had the heat and the humidity here. And we installed it very close to the ocean. And the ocean is a different factor, you know, with the mobile signal that we couldn't get and the sand. I mean, these things are not submarine, so you get the sand in the actual point of sale. So we had other challenges that we needed to fix. But just to say, it won't do it all with the climates that we have here, but it helps a lot for us, for our solution.
That's amazing. I'm going to switch gears a little bit and talk about talent. So I'm thinking as all your businesses are growing and the consortium is growing, you're looking for different types of talents because there's more and more gaps out there as far as what are you looking for actually? Well, we can start with there. What are you looking for as far as talent? Jen?
Well, we don't really, there's no sort of planned program for people who come into our company. We actually, we practice something as part of our work is studying the culture of the companies and the customers who form the base of business for those companies. We do something we call digital ethnography. And that involves really understanding what are the patterns of behavior of this audience. What other types of cultural affiliations or brand affiliations do they have? What kind of conclusions can we draw about this audience based on what we understand? It's really hard to identify somebody who has an ethnographic background. It isn't necessarily something that comes immediately out of school. So we're really looking for more of an aptitude than we are a specific skill set because we're in the marketing space. So we look for people who are going to be very adaptable because as we all know, the technology space moves incredibly quickly, but also have the ability to communicate effectively with a broad variety of constituents in multiple jurisdictions and in geographic environments. So we really are not necessarily screening for a specific skill set because we're not completely on the technology side yet. It's more, as I said, an aptitude.
I want to follow up on that a little bit, just because from an education perspective. Yeah. So what could a university do? Of course, I'm asking because we're trying to find new methods of educating our youth so that they're ready. What else do you think we could be doing?
I think co-op programs, I think we've seen incredible success with co-op programs in general. I think those types of placements are critical for students to understand what the environment is going to be like when they get into it. And I think the more that we can do sort of, you know, one term off, one term in school, one term in a business, the more educated the students are actually going to be about what it's like to be once you get into the workforce. You know, there's the old adage, and we haven't really seen a lot of this, about the challenge working with Gen Y or millennials, and Canel, I'll let you speak a little bit more to this. But we've actually found that millennials are exceptionally skilled in our particular environment because they have that adaptability, because they have that technical fluency. So I think it really is just a matter of ensuring that they have the right background and experience and ideally applying that as much as they can while they're in the school system itself.
Okay, thanks. Al, do you have any comments on that as far as from a medicine perspective?
Well, so I'm a professor, so we're used to getting people come in naive and kicking them out. So we just look for smart people, right? Because you cannot recruit to a skill set because in 2 years it'll be an obsolete skill set. I'm distressed by the education system, how it turns to be, it's turning towards graduating product rather than thinkers. I don't think enough scientists take sociology courses, communication courses, and vice versa. It will take longer to train somebody to actually do something. I think that's healthy because all of us will probably, you all say, we just want smart, orthogonal thinkers, period. Not trained who can write this code or do this scientific experiment. Smart, orthogonal thinkers. And our system is, even with the co-op system, which is good, we take a lot of co-op students, it's still focusing kids too early, in my opinion.
So what do you think the balance should be, Alan, between thinking and doing? What would the ideal sort of breakdown be of that?
Probably 80-20 doing, because you learn by doing as well, right? But you need to have this sort of more broad-based background. So when I took biochemistry, 90% of my courses were science. I didn't realize till I was 40 years old, that was 10 years ago, how important sociology was, right? How important trends, even in a scientific field, it's driven by sociology. If I'd known that at 30, I don't think I would have done something different, but I think I would have appreciated better how to change the culture of how this ecosystem works in my field. Anyway.
Yeah. I actually have a degree in Soviet politics. I didn't take a single business course in school, so I'm certainly an outlier, and I'd be very interested to hear the educational backgrounds of everybody else in the panel, actually.
Yeah, a couple of thoughts. I'm a software engineer, although I've never written a line of code for my software company. A couple of comments. I mean, first of all, talent is the number one priority for me and our company today. It's the number one topic that comes up at every board meeting. It's the number one thing I talk about when I meet with other tech CEOs. So talent is definitely the top priority, and I don't see that changing, probably in my lifetime. Where with tech-based, software-based businesses, talent is our differentiated asset, and that is how we are innovating and creating the next generation of products and services for our customers. I think when we look at engineering talent, in Canada we do a great job of producing engineering talent. Take a school like Waterloo as an example. Waterloo is the number 1 or number 2 recruitment school for Microsoft, Google, Facebook, Amazon. So the largest tech giants in the world are coming to Canada for their talent. So arguably our talent is our best natural resource. Arguably other companies in other regions are doing a better job exploiting our best natural resource than we are. I graduated 4.5 years ago, and when I look at where my friends and classmates are today, they're not in Canada. I see more of my friends in New York, in San Francisco, in London, in Boston, than I do in Toronto. And that needs to change for us to build the next generation of businesses here that are serving, global economies and global markets.
So I have a question for you on that, Knelt. Do you think they're coming back? Because I saw sort of the similar thing. I'm obviously a lot older than you. There was a bit of a diaspora in our 20s and 30s, but most of us ended up coming back and bringing the knowledge that we learned being participants in the global economy back to Canada. Do you think that's something you're going to see, or do you think that most people are going to stay where they are?
It's too early for me to tell, but it is a question we talk about. We do talk about, do they see themselves coming back? And a lot of them, the answer is no. Because they've had successful careers and successful starts, and they do see themselves starting, eventually families and settling down in, major U.S. cities.
So, Isabel, what are you doing in your company to help retain, to keep them there, to help them be part of it?
Yeah, talent is a big one for us as well. We have multiple expertise within the company, hardware, software, so software engineers, and so it's a recurring topic. It's something that we do all the time on a continuous basis, recruiting people. It's great when they get in because we don't lose a lot of people, but we see a lot of companies tapping in the same type of bucket for the same type of resources that we do want. So what we have done internally is we have hired a marketing manager. Of course, she's doing stuff that marketing people are doing, but a lot of the focus on what she does is on recruiting talent. So finding ways to get these people where they are. We're sponsoring events where we have, let's say, school students, high school or even specialized university are doing projects high-tech project, and we are there. We are with them. We are representing the company, but helping them achieve whatever they are doing. So we are putting a lot of emphasis, marketing-wise, to attract these people, to let them know what we do in terms of the results, how exciting it is, and we're lucky here in Montreal and Canada. I mean, the quality of life is great. So we have hired people from outside Canada who came back to Canada because they were excited by the project. So yes, that does happen, and I think it says a lot about being able to talk about real stuff. What is the result? What are the projects? That has been very important for us to do, and we've been successful at that.
So I have a follow-on because I'm thinking about the culture. You have created a culture at 8D, and you also have very, very interesting products. How plugged in are the people who are working for you in the creation of new products, of coming up with the innovations and that kind of stuff? And do you think that that's part of why people want to stay with your company?
It's a very good point. I think that I said before, the success needs to be shared, but it's really true internally. Employees have great ideas, so they need to be involved, and they do get involved because they have that knowledge. So we have a very open culture where people can, tell what they have to say, propose, suggest, and be part of the process. And because they are part of it, the feeling of belonging, it's their products as well. I think that's very important, and that's how we see it. That's how we manage it, and that's what we want to see happening. It's a teamwork. We work as a team, and all of the feedback, the ideas that they have, it just make for better products.
We've experienced a lot of that benefit through co-op students. The average age in our company is 27 years old. With our co-ops, that comes down quite a bit. But because we're in the mobile space, and every single student today, while they're in class, they're not actually in class because they're on their phone all the time. They come to our company, and they are the first to critique our products and the first to make new suggestions and ideas, where sometimes I find our existing team can get tunnel vision and get stuck in doing the same routine and listening to customers without thinking outside of the box. So bringing in co-op students has definitely helped infuse that new set of ideas for us. Out of curiosity, who here has been involved with a co-op program, either as an employee or as an employer? So that's not enough, given Canada invented co-op, 50 years ago, as we know it today. It's something that really differentiates our talent when they graduate at the age of 21 or 22, and it's something that we need to be doing more of.
I have just a point. The latest issue of the magazine Nature has a result of a poll of 50,000 scientists to look at research trends, where researchers are moving between countries, and it's kind of interesting to see where they want to live, where they want to work. Canada ends up being a net gainer, FYI, on talent in the bigger picture. So that's good for countries like Canada. There's 3 or 4 countries that are net gainers where people want to emigrate to. United States is, of course, still the prime destination of all young scientists. And it had good trends on who moves home after. So it's the magazine Nature, and I think it's probably open access. I'm hoping it is. It's really interesting to look. You can just sort of, because everyone's got individual stories, but it's super interesting to look at a very high level, where people move and where they want to move.
Just if I may, a quick point. One interesting program that we came across, actually we were asked to participate, is a program called Student Business. And it was created by the Chamber of Commerce of Montreal and the City of Montreal. And this program is for high school students. They are invited to come to our company, let's say, for a week. We took, over the years, 1 or 2 or 3 students at the time. And they are just introduced to every aspect of a high-tech company. So they get to meet with the different team leads and the different employees, just to understand what this is all about, and understand that if you are an engineer, or if you're thinking about going into the marketing field or finance, but in a high-tech company, look at what we are doing. It removes a lot of the mystery around high-tech, like this is for geeks and stuff. And very early on in the process, I think we can influence, the choice of IT for younger people. And we had a lot of girl student, and it was interesting because in IT we lack, of girls, as you said at the beginning. So I think it's an interesting program to put together to just try to do more in terms of bringing people to the IT field. We do need the talent.
I was going to do a quick promo message for the Career Mash program from CCICT. David Tickle spoke about this when he was on his panel recently. The idea that careers in IT are mashups now. If you want to go into pharmacy, there could be an IT component to your job there. If you want to go into set design or AV, there's obviously going to be a big component to IT there. So almost any career has that embedded in it now. And these types of programs that give you that kind of flexibility to understand just how much technology can play a role in your field are critical, because that's obviously where society is going. So.
I wanted to take what you've just said and then think about scaling as you are getting bigger. How are you going to keep that culture alive? And I only say that because we're going through that right now at the DMC. But I see that it's when you get bigger, to keep a culture of where it's sharing all the time, to keep the networking going, the collaboration. There's a lot of stuff in mashing it all up, making sure that everybody kind of knows what everybody else is doing and can participate. So you've all been quite successful in so many different ways. Could you describe how you've managed to keep a handle on that?
Yeah, I'll jump in here. The biggest thing I've learned about scaling a culture is to recognize that you as an entrepreneur don't scale personally. So the ways you individually influence the culture in the early days are not the same ways you can individually influence the culture in the later days. What we've done is we've found a lot of different excuses and reasons to bring our team together in person. And whether it's birthdays, whether it's team meetings, we have all hands every Friday afternoon with a few beverages afterwards, which is always helpful. We have breakfast in the office for the team. We find a lot of reasons to bring the team together for either structured or completely unstructured conversations and information sharing. The other thing that I've done recently with the team is we've got a few people in the team. I'm not going to share their names because the team doesn't actually know who they are, but that we've appointed kind of unofficially as our culture ambassadors. And they're working behind the scenes and coming up with ideas and keeping their ear to the ground to hear what's working and what's not working, and feeding information back into the executive team as to where we need to continually improve our culture. So these are a couple of things. There's a lot more, but these are a couple of things that we've done that have worked extremely well.
Al, I was just wondering, from your perspective, since you work with people from all over the world, how do you keep it together? What kind of things are you doing from a social perspective?
I think so. Scaling's an important question because I find an organization about 200 people is when you have to start worrying about it, because smaller than that you can do this kind of stuff where everyone can get together. So if you get a large organization like we have, I think you just have a culture to which you recruit, and then ours is a culture of sharing, of course, and no patenting. And so you, by definition, recruit the kind of people that will fit, and then you have your senior folks who buy in, and et cetera. Then it just goes through the organization like that. I think it's relatively easy to scale or to a culture when a company's smaller than that, because you can know everybody, et cetera. I mean, for the companies that are growing beyond, then it takes a hell of a lot more work and thinking of how to do it, especially when you have 3 countries like ours.
Do you have any tricks to share?
No, everyone has their own tricks. I don't think there is a lesson. I think it's often person dependent, that each CEO will have his or her modus operandi of running the company, and the culture will grow around the person. So I would be really hesitant to give a lesson, because it's all about the person who is in charge.
Isabel, just thinking about your company as it's been growing and growing, and it's a curiosity question because I honestly don't know the answer. How has your organization changed since you've gone through a growth spurt?
Change, I don't know. It's really an evolution. You learn a lot from your mistakes, which means that you do a lot of mistakes, unfortunately. if we talk about the culture, I think I second what you just said. It's all about the people. For me, finance, marketing, software, it's not the toughest challenge. The challenge is the people. And it's about the culture. It's making sure that when you hire people, they will fit within the culture that you have. For me, there are two factors when you hire somebody. Of course, there the expertise and all that, and then there's the attitude. Attitude is for me is the culture, is the part that we're talking right now. So we can have people that are very skilled, very good, but if the attitude is not quite there, we're not going to hire. We know that it will not work, and it's just we need to be very careful so that we can scale. Because we have had situations where, well, you think that you'll be fine, and you're not. So you cannot keep these people because they are doing so much damage within the company. So it really is an evolution. We really need to be careful about people that you hire, but people everywhere. We're talking about employees, but it's also the partners, everybody. That's for us the biggest challenge. So to be very careful. You talked about focus. Focus is everywhere, not just on what you're doing, but to keep at it. If it works, it will change when you grow because the challenges are different, but sometimes it's more of the same. The basis will remain, and people, it's all about the people.
We're in the middle of a really challenging evolution ourselves, as I think I mentioned, going from a services company to a software company. And making that transition, I remember actually I sat on the advisory board of a company called Radiant Core, run by an amazing entrepreneur named James Goldman, who now is a company called Click Health. And he was struggling with the same problem that we were. He had this great consulting company. He had this product. And he said to me, what do I do? Where do I focus? Coming back to that question. I said, Jay, you have to focus on the product. You can't possibly do both. And I unfortunately did not take my own lesson when I got to that point myself. So we've tried to navigate both keeping our services business going and evolving this product at the same time. And what I've learned is that those are two very different kinds of businesses. And essentially, we are now incubating two different cultures within a very small 20-person company. So that is an ongoing challenge for us, something we continue to navigate. And I think the question of focus is going to come down to us pretty quickly, too.
I had one thing. You said something interesting, which is what we do. I think the talent, everyone is replaceable from a talent point of view, but culture is not. And so when you hire the wrong person, because you will, get rid of them quickly. That was a lesson, well, not a lesson learned, something we've been doing. I think it's super important because everyone is replaceable. You don't think, how can we live without such and such a person? It's easy. Find somebody else. If they don't fit.
So I have a number of Twitter questions, and so I'm going to start there. And we're also going to be asking the audience to participate, too. I'm just checking the clock to see how much time we have. I think we have a few minutes.
No, we have 1,800 seconds.
I can't deal with that.
1,754 seconds.
Stop it. These are questions for you, Al. How does your open source work for drug discovery, and what's your business model?
So remember the fundamental question to which everyone is aligned. Industry, society, academics, we want to cure diseases. Industry happens to make money out of it. That whole ecosystem is not succeeding. It's not succeeding in many parts because we don't know enough about human biology. And so that's the fundamental question. And so it's a question that cannot be addressed by any individual sector. So the business model is, how do we discover more about human biology without each of us paying for it individually? It makes economic sense to pool resources. And so therefore, that's the first tick. Why do you do it open? Because if one funds research where everyone's incentivized to keep it secret, A, you don't gain as much knowledge. B, you add an incredible layer of oversight and legal and stuff when you should just shoot yourself, right, rather than do that. And so we've had some dramatic examples of unpredicted successes in which we made something open, we collaborated, our Oxford lab and Harvard collaborated, created a molecule, then someone in New York used that molecule to discover a rare cancer treatment, and one of our companies is in the clinic already. And you would have never thought it would happen. It makes sense in retrospect. Yeah, open sharing, who knows where the path of discovery will go. And so more stories like that make the companies realize there's something to this sharing. And then all of a sudden we've had going from one company to 3, now 8, soon 10. So it's not a business model per se, it's a business/societal model.
It's like they're catching on. That's cool.
Well, they're driving it. No, it's not the business sector is leading because it makes economic sense to share. The public sector is, in fact, the slow one, bizarrely.
Interesting. I have another one. Should engineering students have mandatory social classes?
I've got a lot to say on this one. So I did engineering at Waterloo, one we refer to as the MIT of the North. I remember sitting down with our vice president of academic, Dr. Chukma, one day, probably my second year. And he was asking me feedback on the engineering program, and I was explaining to him how I don't go to class and how we need to broaden our horizons. And then he shared with me what MIT does with their engineering program. And it's close to a quarter of the mandatory courses for an engineering student at MIT is outside of the engineering faculty, and courses in the social sciences and humanities. And now as a business owner, 5 years after doing an engineering degree, I completely get it. I am an engineer, I understand technology, I appreciate technology, but the skills that I use day in and day out are not the skills and the topics that were taught to me by my engineering professors. I think it's a huge opportunity, and even as an employer, I'd love to see more engineers that have taken courses in psychology and public speaking and communications and marketing. And I think that'll change their perspectives in terms of how technology is built, how technology is used, where it is very easy as a technologist, as an engineer, to get stuck in a bubble where you focus on what the technology can do versus how the technology would be used.
And how would you influence that back into the university co-op for sure, because people get to get firsthand experience. But I'm thinking that this probably could start a lot earlier. And I'm thinking even in high school, this idea of these multiple T skills that you need in life. So any other comments on that?
Yeah, I think smart young people want these skills and are going to go get them. The question is, are they going to get it from the educational institutions, be it a secondary or post-secondary school, or are they going to go get it online, the different resources that are now popping up online, whether it's around math, around science, around social entrepreneurship, around entrepreneurship in general. Smart, young, ambitious people are going to go get those resources and that education. The question is, are we going to provide it to them through the existing structures already built?
Jen?
I was just going to say, I think that, we're obviously making some strides on the softer skill side. I think what's becoming an increasingly critical skill for entrepreneurs, workers in Canada in general, is that global experience. We are becoming such a global economy. So the opportunity to go and work elsewhere for a couple of years, get the experience of not what it only is it like to talk to and communicate with people in your work environment, but what are the barriers that you confront as you cross cultural or language barriers? Or what are the implications of certain actions in other societies that you may have no insight into that can have significant impact on business going forward? And those are things that I think Canada is very, very uniquely positioned to be able to provide to our emerging workforce, given our role in the global economy, and something that we as employers need to be conscious of trying to foster as well.
Out of curiosity, how many people here have left their home country for some sort of business purpose outside of vacationing, in the last 100 days? The last 30 days? Okay, that's good. It's very important that we travel. I was on 82 flights last year. I'm probably going to do more than that this year, and it's not only me from our company. A lot of our team is constantly going out there, and that's the one thing I'd love to see more of, is Canadians outside of Canada.
And then come back.
That was another Twitter question, actually, because the question is this: is it good that top tech companies recruit from University of Waterloo? Isn't that a brain drain? So it's really speaking to how do we attract companies to come back in here. I should also mention that I have a number of incubators from around the world that are coming into the zone, and we're talking about doing exchanges. And I think that that actually is going to add a lot of value. And I can't help but ask this question, because it's like, what is the role then of a university? Have you been thinking about that? How will it help your companies, do you think, the changing role? And what would you like it to be?
Well, there is a bit of a crisis in post-secondary education in significant parts of the world right now, just because so much information is available. The reality is, though, that you cannot get that experience of going to school and being in a four-year program. There's as much social value and life experience value that you get from that as there is in just, basic academic value. So I think we discount the importance of just going through that experience by looking at just the knowledge that we're going to be gaining. And I think that's something that people fail to factor into the equation on occasion.
There are many different things that can be taught in a university. So if I talk about entrepreneurship for a second, this experience of being able to learn, I was talking about the entrepreneurship school in La Beauce in Quebec. This is like a complement to a basic, education in whatever degree in university. It is another way with a program that can fit into your day-to-day life when you have a business. Another way, learning from the people who have done it, like sort of a mentoring program, but different, sharing. It's 24 hours, very intense, of the life of an entrepreneur and the tips and tricks. And so people like Jean Coutu here, who's done, a large company, a Cascade. So very high-profile leaders who are willing to share what they've done, and it's the value for the other entrepreneurs that are, they're called athletes, that are attending, the 25 or 30 entrepreneurs per class that are attending. The value is so high at every level, because it's all about the mistakes that you will not do. We all do mistakes all the time, but if you do less of it, you will go faster. So the focus thing you were talking about, I realized, I thought I was focused. We all think we're focused. But then, when I went to MIT, I really understood what focus was all about. But I was like 7 years in. So the sooner you learn about these things, by learning about the other experiences, the better off you are. So that sharing, and university is one thing, but these programs, this is a very good one. There are others out there, very, very valuable to go get it from the people who have done it.
I think there's three things that every university graduate should have by the time they finish post-secondary. The first is, the point we touched on earlier, which is multidisciplinary skills. So if I'm in engineering, making sure that I have mandatory social sciences and humanities courses. If I'm in accounting, getting some exposure to technology and programming. So having a broader perspective on different domains at the age of 21 or 22 is a huge asset. Number two would be some sort of global exposure. At Waterloo and Co-op, I did a term in the US. I did a work term in the UK. I did a study exchange in Hong Kong. I got to travel for conferences to Egypt and Malaysia. So I had a number of global exposures at the age of 19 and 20 and 21. But every single university graduate, and it is not hard to do for the institutions, should encourage everybody to have that. And the third, which is an easy one, is co-op, so real-world life experience. And we've talked about that quite a bit as well today.
That's awesome. So we have about 7.5 minutes left to our session, and we'd really like our audience to get involved. Janet, thank you so much for helping. And are there any questions out there for our panel? I can't see a thing, so.
So somebody asked me a question on Twitter, and the question was about how do we get more Canadian enterprises and industry buying from Canadian startups. I shared our example in that our first customer was Rogers Media, and they bought from us when we were 3 people as a company. I guess curious to hear everybody else's perspectives on getting more big business to buy from small business.
That's something, little infomercial for ITAC for a second, but that's something that ITAC is working on as an organization. How do we make sure that we have larger companies paired with the really innovative, interesting, fast-moving startups to pair the need on the large businesses side to absorb that innovation, and the small business or the entrepreneurial business getting the resources that that large organization can provide. So obviously, as the chair of ITEC and the member of the board who actually is running the smallest organization, that's a key priority for us and something that we're going to be working on over the course of the next couple of years.
I think that government can play a role there as well. If you have some sort of incentive for a large organization to source some of the product solutions that they are looking for from smaller Canadian companies here in Canada, I think that could be of great help, because oftentimes, the needs is there, the answer is right behind, and the matchmaking is not done. So government could play, I believe, an important role in making sure, helping this thing to happen.
I think to add on to that point, in terms of the matchmaking, the other thing that government can do is really help establish a culture. And that's just through leadership. And that's our political and government leaders saying to businesses around the world that Canada is a place to be an entrepreneur, Canada is a place to start a business, Canada is a place to grow the business, and here's exactly how we're doing it. And encourage the bigger industries to work with the smaller industries, but simply by talking about it, and that's the first step. And then business leaders will see the value. When we sold our first product to Rogers Media, we charged probably 1/10 of what we charge today. So it makes economic sense to be an early adopter of new technologies, because the value goes beyond the dollars. It goes by being a customer and an early tester.
That is an excellent point, Kunal. If we take anything away from this panel, I think that would be a great anecdote to retain. I also think that as we look at how this entire space is evolving, how the digital economy is moving forward, announcements like Minister Clements this morning around open data, that's an incredibly exciting initiative. I expect to see a whole crop of new startups figuring out what to do with that data, how to make it usable for business, how to make it consumable by society, and how to improve society by using that data to improve certain aspects, either efficiency, ways that we can identify areas where we may not even know that there are issues, and it'll be exciting to see exactly what is done with the Open Data Initiative once more details come out.
We have to also be careful of buying into the marketing spin. Canada often compares, we want to be like Boston. By the time we're like Boston, they're ahead. I suspect that we should just not worry about, as a Stanford grad, I don't care about MIT. Just do it for ourselves and don't compare ourselves to other people. We're constantly navel-gazing in Canada. Oh, Boston's got this and Boston's got that. I swear we got the equal amount of talent, the equal amount of, nice people. There's a lot of money here. We just got to get off our you-know-whats and do it and stop feeling badly for ourselves. I think we can compete. We have competed. We will compete. We just happen to be in Canada.
I don't know what to say to that, because yes, I'm an American and I'm also a Canadian, and I go, when I came to Canada, I couldn't believe how people just don't celebrate themselves here, and they're amazing here. I stayed in Canada. It's an incredible country full of great talent. For some reason, part of communication, marketing, I don't know, I've been told it's part of the culture, but I meet such exciting people. So I think part of it is how we're getting our message out to the world, and I think that that's something that we are going to be doing more and more, especially with people like yourselves here, because you're making such a huge impact on the world. And it's been a very, very exciting session. I think we have time for a question, and I want to make sure we have it because we've got only a couple of minutes. So, yeah, right there.
I can stand 30 meters back.
That way. There we go. Keep going, keep going. There you, yeah, okay, good.
Hotter.
It's hard to see.
Hotter. Hotter.
I'm here. Hi.
Hi.
A great session, but I got a little worried towards the end, and you'll guess from my accent, I'm from the UK. Kunal, you said some things during your talk and comments about the need for graduates to get international exposure, international experience. You also talked about Canadian companies going global or global companies based in Canada. So don't, please, start thinking about getting more protectionism, more Canadian businesses to buy from yourselves. Think more in terms of going out into the world, finding those Canadians who've succeeded outside of Canada, maybe bring some of them back, better yet, work with them when they're in the US or in the UK or France or wherever it is, and build international companies based on international talent. Don't try and use your own relatively small market as an excuse.
Yeah, I think it's a great and completely valid point. On a personal note, our business has grown quite a bit in the UK in the last 12 months. 12 months ago, we had no customers in the UK, and now it probably represents about 10 to 12% of our revenue. And we're trying to double that in the next year. And the way we've done that is literally by getting on a plane and going there and going and chasing that business. I think the earlier comments around encouraging big business in Canada to do business with small business in Canada is around getting that first start. And that goes back to an earlier point we made. So Rogers Media, in our case, was our first customer, and that made a lot of sense. I've met a lot of young entrepreneurs who've got an initial prototype, an initial idea, but don't have that first major customer. And that's where the culture around big companies being early adopters of new technologies will help accelerate the growth of those companies. But absolutely, once you land your first few customers and are able to prove the value of your product or service, you absolutely need to be thinking of yourselves as a global business from day one. We've done that at Polar, and I expect and want to see more Canadian businesses that are based here doing that.
But there's a slight difference. Canada's a big country. So in the UK, where we have a lab, if you know Sir this and Sir that and Lord this and Lord that, all of a sudden the business deals are done and they all live within a 100-mile radius of London. In Canada, we don't have that network of senior business leaders. And we also have to travel on a plane, just, halfway across our countries all the way across Europe. And so I don't see a problem in sort of organizational structures to facilitate Canadian companies learning about what's in Canada, because Vancouver and Toronto is London, Moscow. And so that might be a little bit parochial, but in the Canadian context, it does help to have some of the larger structure connect people who live in different parts of our country. We're not as fortunate to have all that business centered around London and the networks that the business community there has created over the last 1,000 years.
Well, I'm very sad to say that our time is up, and I've absolutely enjoyed meeting every one of you in front of all of you, and it's been quite an experience. So thank you very, very much, and I hope that actually I talk with you separately, one-on-one, at a later time. So thank you so much, and thank you, audience. Take care.